We're back in the house, back at HQ, back at home base. The boys are back together. You've got the lads back in the tin. We've got all the geezers here together. The family is reunited. It looks like the boys have finally returned to the town centre, which is nice. They've come from the green belt and they've entered the central business district, which is entering town. So the boys are back in town, is what I'm trying to say. We're back home. It's no longer Zoom. Christmas is over. This is the New Year special, and what a year it's been. 2020, filled with dizzying highs.
I'm dizzy, worrying lows. I'm so down for it. There are times when I don't really listen to what you're saying.
I know.
So it's kind of good. The point helps.
Yeah, because the reason I always want the opening monologue to have like a bit of an unhinged presence. That's why I have no idea what I'm going to say until I start saying it. So often I get stuck midway through with like, this is really not making any sense. So then I'm like, I need to bail this out to Drew, but then you're like paralytic.
I'm looking over it. Oh, what? Yeah. Lows. There's been a bad and good year as well.
Yeah. So
but what a better time to look back on it.
Back at
Let's get some closure.
Let's get some closure.
Let's close that door.
Yeah.
Is that where closure of the word comes from?
Yeah.
Tell us in the comments.
So
subscribe to the Patreon. We should say that at the start of episodes.
So subscribe to the Patreon. Because it's important to fund alternative media, you know.
And alternative personalities.
We're the wackiest kids in town, so it's important that that we get funded so we can carry on being wacky and leading culture.
The government doesn't have that much place for wacky funding.
No, but it is true though, because this is a silly podcast that sadly will never amount to causing any real social change. But
no, it purports itself as doing the opposite.
Yeah, it's a fake news podcast.
Fake news,
proudly
to spread fake news.
Dissemination is a proud heritage that we're trying to build. But if you guys, I assume a lot of you guys are libtards, so you're reading The Guardian, you're reading the New York Times, and you're thinking this is, media that's uncovering power. But these are the lapdogs of power, you know.
It would be quite nice to get a list of everything you've called the viewers and listeners. they're incels, libtards. Cuck. I'm sure you've said disabled a few times.
But because if we can build a strong base on our Patreon next year, that's your New Year's resolution, guys. You know, we've got our own New Year's resolutions, but yours New Year's resolutions is to make sure that
we
Andrew
can fulfill our New Year's resolution. I can quit my job. My New Year's resolution is to quit my job, and that has to. But you have this isn't in my hands.
Yeah,
my future is in your hands.
Yeah.
So smash that like button.
But no, we are alternative media because no matter how stupid this thing is, if we are funded by you guys, we are performing in a rare bracket of some of the freest media in the world. Genuinely,
yeah, we're not held up to these big corporations. You know, the people have been in touch, like Teflon and Shell, but we don't represent big oil.
Yeah,
we represent you, the people. So although there are easier methods out, we're here for you.
There's not loads of podcasts that are funded purely by crowdfunding. A lot of them use advertising. If we're funded purely by crowdfunding with no advertisers, we will have the opportunity to be some of the freest media in the world. Genuinely.
And can you imagine the capabilities of unleashing these minds?
We will use that power. We won't use it at all, actually.
It will be so underutilized.
It'll be so underutilized. We'll be some of the... If we can be fully funded via crowdsourcing, Patreon or any of the other sites, we will be one of the freest types of media there is currently left in the world. And we will not use that at all because we will give it a bad name by...
It's money and power dissipating into the ether. That's what we stand for. If we could get that underneath the sign.
Yeah.
But speaking
we are beholden to no power, but we won't hold them to account.
Exactly.
Instead, we will carry on spreading fake
news. But have you seen... So this, with the sports personality of the year...
Yes.
Tyson Fury was put up for it.
Yes.
And then went on this whole media trail saying that he didn't want to be like, he asked BBC to take him off the nomination list.
Yeah.
Because he's already, the people's champion. What a load of shite.
No. It's because he got taken off like 5 years ago because the BBC got scared.
He wasn't saying that. He was saying, I don't need to have an award. He went on Jonathan Ross, no less than
I saw
Wossy,
the clip as well.
And he went on, and his point wasn't because of what happened in the past. His point was that because I'm already the people's champion, I don't need an award to say that.
It's partly to do with the fact that he got kicked off because of the fury about the homophobia.
Fury, nice. Well, yeah, okay, fine, but also,
and it's kind of like fair enough. That's not what he was saying. If he's been kicked off an award and then now everyone likes him,
but he never mentioned being kicked off the awards because
well,
he was like, I don't need this validation, but that's because he was going to lose. Because you can't call yourself the People's Champion and then lose a People's Choice Award of voting for the entirety of the British public and then not win that.
Yeah,
I think it was out of fear.
I mean, to start off the big 2020 review by such a minor gripe about Tyson Fury.
Well, it's just annoyed me. I've had a lot of time to stew and think over this festive
But I really
period.
like Tyson Fury.
Yeah, me too. But it's a dead move. I think it's a dead move.
So you're picking a very minor thing you don't like about someone you genuinely do like to open up the show of the biggest, one of the biggest news years ever.
Yeah,
and you're going to open it up.
Yeah.
With something that happened 2 weeks ago.
Correct.
With Tyson Fury.
2020
who
review.
You like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, because my memory, as we all know, isn't that good. So the events that I remember could only kind of push back a couple of weeks' time. So this is all I've really got. 2020 year review.
Well, the whole thing about Tyson Fury, it was just one of the most shocking things I've ever come across, and it doesn't seem necessary.
Yeah. No, it is fun, your memory of the news. Like when you kind of get stuck on it. If you read the news for a period, then you'll be stuck on that news story for months. Like when you were stuck on the North Korean missile crisis, and that happened for like 8 months too long. You kept bringing it up.
I just remember bringing it up and like, what's happening with that? Anyone checking up on that? Because that sounded pretty scary at the time.
I'm not checking up on it. No. But have you guys?
Is anyone else? Anyone checking this? But alas, as I say, there's been a lot of time to stew over minor things in this festive period. How was your Christmas?
My Christmas was fine. I was with my sister, my mum, and my sister's boyfriend. So it was good in the sense that it was like
marry, avoid.
All right. Well, I'd avoid. I'd probably marry my mum.
Weird. Creep alert. Fucking hell.
Or would it be? Would I marry? What's worse?
I think you've got to marry the boyfriend.
You've got to marry the boyfriend.
Because at least you can get sex somehow.
Yeah, but I'm not gay either. Yeah, but I'm not,
get over it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I'm marrying, and that would cause a lot of family turmoil anyway. So I'm marrying my sister's boyfriend.
Don't let me put words in your mouth. If you want to marry your mum, you can marry your mum.
No. You've shamed me. You've kink shamed me. I'd marry my sister's boyfriend.
Yeah.
I'd.
Who you gonna kiss?
I'd snog me mum, and I'd avoid my sister.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really in the Christmas spirit.
Well, I feel
really nice. Really good.
Well, I feel my hands are sort of tied. I don't really know what the.
I didn't tell you what to answer, mate. I'm just here asking questions.
I don't really know.
Look,
I feel weird about it.
Well, I just want the viewers to get to know you.
Well, that's not. You know,
weird, man.
I don't know what options I could have done, which wouldn't have been weird.
Snog your mum and steal your sister's boyfriend.
No, I didn't. Well, what else was I going to do? So that was
creepy.
So that was fine.
Yeah.
It means that I don't have to spend Christmas with like. It is weird. Is a problem when, we have a Christmas Day where we have quite a lot of extended family, and we all sit down and Christmas Day ends up being one of the worst parts of the Christmas period. Like Boxing Day and Christmas Eve are normally better because with Christmas Eve and Boxing Day, you're with the people you want to see.
Yeah.
But with Christmas Day, you're like, this is a big day of the year. This is quite like this is probably one of the biggest celebration culturally that we do.
Yeah.
And I'm sat here next to like
talking to my Neville about trans.
My like uncle's by marriage is brother's wife.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there like, how am I spending this day
asking him to pass the gravy?
Yeah, and it's just like this seems weird. There's something's happened where
you do Christmas a lot bigger than I've ever done it because ours has always been the close family kind of extended to grandparents and maybe sometimes cousins. But it's mostly just me, my father or mother, depending what year it is, and then their respective partners, and that's kind of it. Although, like, maybe their mothers. I've had some with, as I said, like dads, couple of dads' girlfriends, mums and dads, who then they haven't really been around for that much longer. Yeah. It's just they happen to be with him over the Christmas period.
Yeah, and also don't you find like family dynamics? It's like it's really good to see your family, but you can't help but it can bring out the worst in you so easily.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's tough to say.
Because immediately you fall back into
you
like
regress
dynamics that you could spend all year feeling comfortable with who you think you are, and then you go
Whilst
home.
also going, I'm going to show my mum the new me.
Yeah, you come back and you're immediately.
Where's the Marmite? I'm hungry.
There's a lot of quite undignified
Yeah,
moments
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel over the Christmas period.
100%.
And you know, if you're in it, I've often found if I was in like quite a good vibe and I'm like feeling kind of like, you know, I feel happy with how things are. I've nailed a couple of social interactions. It
Yeah.
feels like
You're ready
you
to
know,
go home.
I know who I am. You go home before you know it. There's a lot of very
But
undignified.
you're reminded about who you were.
You are, no, and also who you are.
And who you
That's
really
worse.
are.
That's
Yeah,
worse. You
yeah.
meet your dad and you realise, I am you.
oh
I'm just
God,
slowly
yeah.
turning into you.
Yeah, that's the terrifying thing. Like every
Yeah.
day, isn't it? Every day. But thanks for bringing all that up because I have not had that. Christmas.
Yeah, because you've had
I haven't. I've been here.
like a ridiculously.
I need to go home.
Yeah, it's actually absurd.
It's ridiculous. I need a break. From
It's
these,
only
these
because the
walls.
year's been so mental.
Yeah, that I've been stuck here. I mean, Christmas Day was fun. Because all my friends seemed more upset about me spending Christmas than I was.
Sure.
So I just got loads of FaceTimes throughout the day, and it just felt like I was kind of the beneficiary of a Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Yeah, but you don't deal with emotions when they happen.
No.
They come back like in a completely different season and a different place.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They come out and sudden.
It will be in a couple of years' time, but like, you know what, that was a tough Christmas.
Because you've been like remarkably upbeat and positive about a fairly like, you know, mind shifting and potentially traumatic Christmas. You're
I
like,
wouldn't say traumatic.
well, that's what you wouldn't say.
Well, because I don't know.
Because it's
Someone
it's,
needs to tell me.
Yeah,
Am I
'cause you're
experiencing serious psychological harm?
No, because the way you talk about it is like it's nice to have some time alone. It's nice to do that, but I just
I'm an
know
optimist.
that someone in your life is going to have to bear the brunt of that when you finally face up to these problems that you keep. Yeah, no, it's fine actually.
Yeah, it's all
I-
good,
Yeah, no, actually, I was looking forward to spending
well,
some time
since
alone.
I've known
But then
you,
it's going to be during the summer next year. We're
Yeah.
all going to be drinking mojitos, having a great time, loving life, and then Andrew,
I'll just
before you
suddenly
know
collapse.
it, collapses, screams
in the sand.
Yeah.
I presume you'd be drinking mojitos
Yes.
on the beach.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, since I've known you, which is 12 years old, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
You've been counted down to a crisis or like a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
That I'm gonna have just because you also can't handle the positive outlook on things.
No, yeah. Well, because I'm actually a very positive person in some ways, in the sense that I'm always like it's all gonna be fine.
Yeah.
But I'm like short term, I'm not positive.
Yeah.
Like long term, I'm actually crazy positive.
All right.
Like long term, I'm like, oh, we'll be fine. We can work this thing out.
Yeah.
But short term positive is being like, oh, I'm sure it'll be open. You know, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure. Like
You're not that.
I'm not that.
Yeah, you're not. That's where we clash most of the time.
Yeah, because you're like you have a complete belief that the
Yeah.
decision you make is going to be
But that's
right.
the best way to live because then if you're like, oh, I'm sure it'll be open, and you go there and it's closed, then the next thing that you've got to work out, oh, I'm sure it'll be that, and you just go from situation and event to event whilst also thinking that it's going to work out.
You spent Christmas alone, Andrew.
I am upset by it. I'm feeling horrible about it.
And I think it's partly to do with your decisions. And I think a fun exercise for you guys at home. There's a lot of narrative about how 2020 is not your fault and like self-care and like though it's been a big anxious year for all of us and all these things out of our control.
Yeah.
Maybe it's for a bit of fun. Take all the control onto yourself.
Yeah, that's
wacky.
wacky.
And say all of the problems that happened were my fault.
Well,
That'd be quite interesting.
What a crazy idea, Horatio.
No, I'm just
ridiculous
saying.
idea.
I'm suggesting. This is like a this, as an exercise.
As in, take lockdown upon yourself.
Yeah,
Take all
so-
the lonely feelings that you felt.
The
and
Brexit deal.
Your
you
coronavirus
could've
is your
stopped that.
fault.
Coronavirus is your
You're patient one. You fucked that bat or whatever it was.
Yeah.
You let Meghan and Harry leave in the royal family.
That
was
was you.
because of your racist portrayal of Meghan in
It
the
depends
media.
which side you're on, and whichever side you're on, you're
True.
the wrong
You're the
side.
problem of. You're the instigator of the one that you like and that you believe in.
Yeah.
And then, but it's not about analysing what happened to the world. It's about you. How have you felt because of those events when it's your fault that those events occurred? I like that. Post it in the comments.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, just as like a fun exercise, take all of the blame onto yourself.
Because if we want a balanced narrative
Yeah.
in our discourse, then we have to have that.
Why are we always blaming the government
Yeah,
or
yeah.
like the virus that no one's fault? Why don't we ever blame ourselves?
This could all be me.
Hey, you know what? I'm going to be the first one to do it. This was all my fault.
No, Horatio, I'm going to be fine with it. It's all my fault.
I ate the bat.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but I'm
happened.
pretty sure it was me.
It felt like a fever dream.
There was a
but-
couple of like hazy days at the end of last year. I'm
Yeah.
sure I could have eaten that bat. That
Yeah.
was me. I shouldn't have started the wildfires in Australia. I could
But
see
it
why I
happened.
did it
At the
because I
time.
thought that it would be
It made
fun.
sense at the
Yeah.
time.
But looking back, it
Probably
seems
for
like
the
it was
worst.
the wrong. Yeah, it didn't go as well as I'd hoped. The Brexit deal. I started Brexit. I did a bad deal. That was all me.
Yep.
I could have done it
But then,
quicker.
so how do you now? So then, what effect is that having on you right now?
Well, I'll tell you what.
this
I
is a
think-
live psychological study.
Yeah, this is live. So I'm taking all of the blame for everything bad that's happened to everyone. How about it's also my fault for all racism?
Yeah.
For Black Lives Matter.
For racism, sexism,
the Me Too
transphobia,
transphobia.
You put on a Harvey Weinstein mask and fat suit and were inappropriate with all these women.
I'll tell you what I've learned from taking all of the responsibility for everything that's bad that's happened this year.
In the last 20 seconds.
Because it's all so much, it is a weird relief.
Yeah.
It
Well,
is.
a lot of any kind of therapy, as well as a lot of Eastern philosophical traditions. Ooh, oopsie! Someone's been watching
Judaism.
Avatar. For instance, Hail Jeshua, King of all. Is the idea of repentance, the same in Christianity as well. The idea of repenting for your sins, which then first of all is taking acknowledgement for those sins. So it's actually quite an easy way to just absolve yourself of any kind of.
Yeah, that's what I love about the Catholic confession thing.
Just
which
sit in a
is
box
like,
for 10 minutes.
It was
with a
great. You
priest
just
and you're
say
cool.
it, and then he's like, "All right, yeah."
Well, I say 10 Hail Marys and get the fuck out.
Oh man, it's like a great way of dealing with it. But yeah, it does feel so. Take all the responsibility. It's all your fault, and then
all your
none of
fault.
it's your fault
If
because
that's-
it's too much.
Yeah.
No human can deal with that much guilt. So then
Therefore,
you
you absolve
enter a
yourself.
delusional period of being above it.
So to absolve yourself of responsibility for your own feelings is to take responsibility for all the problems of every time.
I feel as well, this podcast was only born because of 2020. I only started it because of lockdown. So as much as this year's been shit, this only exists as like...
Which makes it even shitter.
Yeah. Well, I actually think it's a pretty good podcast.
Yeah, I enjoyed doing it as well.
But this, I do feel that this is a cultural artifact
Yeah.
of the mindset of 2020.
Absolutely.
And I do hope that people will look
We've
back.
gone through ups and downs
Yeah.
on this. You can see different levels of sanity, of physical appearance.
Oh God, you're
Health.
looking better now. I mean, when we started,
When we started, it was tough.
It was bleak.
It was pretty bleak. I was like, well, I've started a new skincare routine.
Oh, yeah?
as well. Which
on the Patreon we could do a skincare routine.
yeah,
thing.
skincare routine.
Skincare routine. Oh my goodness.
Skincare routine. But it's it's not that interesting. But
No,
fucking-
don't tell them.
Well, okay, it's really interesting, but don't tell them the skincare routine.
Don't
then
tell
it's
them
not
the
interesting.
skincare. Don't tell them the skincare.
Okay, you're not allowed to know it.
Because we'll do a proper video.
But it's just I've had bad skin for a long time, and then you start getting a good routine, and then suddenly you got dry skin as a problem. Am I right, guys? Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what moisturizer's for.
I know, but then I use moisturize. You know what?
We'll save it for the Patreon.
Save for the Patreon. It's riveting stuff.
But yeah, it has been. It feels like just the general aesthetic and the vibe of this podcast. It does feel like it's created something that I think I didn't know what I wanted from this, but I like the feeling that it's us constantly avoiding our true anxieties and traumas
Yes.
from this year.
Yes.
It feels like a great exercise in sort of putting all your anxieties, traumas in a little box and ignoring them.
you've dealt with them.
Yeah. So
For other people to then give us money to do. It's really healthy, everything that we do.
and I've realised what
This plant's still going, though.
this plant it's seen better days.
It's such a... Someone commented on the other day, it's just such a miserable looking cunt. Like, it
Wait,
just sits there
who
in the
commented
middle.
on it? A friend?
I think it might have been, I don't know.
Was it a YouTube comment or was
No,
it?
no, it was a friend's comment. It wasn't on YouTube.
Well,
But
yeah,
it's just a
quite
sad looking cunt.
such a sad-
And like, it just kind of sits here. And because we literally when we first were making the studio for this, it's like, well, we need something in there.
yeah.
So we were always going to do a plant in there, but we haven't picked like the prettiest one.
Yeah, but it sort of goes with the 2020 vibe, which is like
Yeah.
this beaming optimism of the Boys
Yeah.
Go Wild sign, this kind of like neon pink,
Yeah.
Fun,
everything's going to be okay.
excitement,
and then you
everything
look
is the
down and you
best.
see this dying plant, which is...
don't want to live anymore.
Yeah, it shows the
It's
the
yin and
duality.
yang.
Yeah. But I've realised the true...
Is it yin and yang, or is it yin and yang?
Yin and yang.
With a G.
Yin and yang.
Okay.
Um,
One of those ones I always just never feel as confident as I should do.
Yes, and that's why you have a very low grasp of nuance of morality.
And self-esteem.
Yeah. But I do think, looking back, so this is a time for reflection for all of us. I think the dynamic of this podcast, be it good or bad,
Yeah.
is I was trying to nail it down with what is this, and I think fundamentally, if we're going to break us down to 2 words each, it would be catty dad and messy slut.
You know,
I'd say that's the dynamic.
I really can't argue with that.
Because I've realised something about, if I was something, it would be fundamentally I'm a catty dad, really.
Yep.
Which is a camp straight dad who's very bitchy with comments.
Yep.
Who's like still a dad, still straight, but still is like, you're really going to wear that? And like a lot of a very bitchy thing. And then you're a messy slut.
A messy slut. Yeah, say no more. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what people come for.
Yeah.
Is that fundamentally this is the catty dad
and
messy slut dynamic.
Well, it's a shame we've already got a name.
Yeah.
For the podcast.
Yeah, it's true.
Catty dad and messy slut.
Yeah.
No, I think it's Bad Boys Gone Wild. Well, that maybe encapsulates that in The Boys Gone Wild, you know?
The catty dad and messy slut. That could be our sort of like our podcast name.
It's our shtick that we haven't really consciously thought about.
Is the classic catty dad messy slut routine.
Yeah, you know, it's just like Oppie and Anthony.
Yes.
Podcast.
Should we do you want to discuss any highlights of 2020?
Well, I've there's been some great TV out in 2020. It's been quite the year for film and TV. Even in these dark times, we've managed to find a refuge for ourselves in the sofas with our family. I have enjoyed very much Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Avatar: Legend of Aang, iconic show.
It is honestly maybe the best show that's ever been created on TV.
There's an argument for it for sure.
It is just wall to wall astonishing. Because it's on Nickelodeon. So it is aimed for a kids' audience. But my God, the themes aren't aimed for kids.
Not at all, my God. When I watched it first, it was my favourite show when I was a kid, but I liked it because it was like flying.
Because they
and, like,
made silly noises.
And stuff like that.
There was a big.
But watching it now, it's like it hit with a new punch of the thematic depth.
Honestly, learnt life lessons from it. I'm not joking. There's been a couple of things. It's mostly the wise uncle to Zuko.
Oh, yeah.
He says shit, I'm like, fuck yeah, man.
And there is no hope at all.
No, Zuko. You must never give in to despair. Allow yourself to slip down that road and you surrender to your lowest instincts. In the darkest times, hope is something you give yourself. That is the meaning of inner strength.
In the same way that he kind of pops up on your screen with these lessons, he pops
Sure.
up in my head now.
Yeah.
When I'm out and about on the street, you hear, "Oh, as young as Zuko, one must always remember to play with fire. You have to be it."
It's such a good point.
And
I
but
remember
then,
when
because
we
with
first...
these life lessons, the hilarious thing is that if you like time it poorly on Netflix, you're digesting the life lessons of the last episode, and then it comes up with the Nickelodeon entrance. It's like a kid skateboarding. It's like,
Welcome to Nickelodeon, all the kids.
It was just one of those freak accidents where like kids' TV shows are getting made all the time, and then a perfect storm happened where a truly majestic piece of
it's
art.
just gorgeous.
It is,
and it's hilarious, and it's got the perfect combination of it being like it's not really funny. There's a couple of bits where it's kind of they do maybe a good joke.
Yeah, sure.
But it's got that beautiful combination of doing a couple of good jokes, but it also being hilarious to laugh at for the jokes that they're trying to go for. The
very slapstick.
Weird sound effects, slapstick. But yeah, as I say, just like there has been no point that I've been disappointed with that program, and like the ending was just gorgeous.
It was perfect.
The ending was the perfect ending,
Yeah.
and I just it's one of those programs that you watch and like I know the ending's gonna make me feel good, make me feel content with it. And my God, just watch it. It's on Netflix. It's fucking brilliant.
And it's also with shows that keep doing seasons until they're so bad no one will watch them. It's nice to have a show that quit while it was ahead.
Yeah.
You know, it could have easily done way more
3
shows.
books, not even seasons. They're books.
Because
they're out of there.
Because they're going to go in the canon of humanity.
Yeah.
I'd put that up. If we're sending a time capsule up to aliens, put Avatar Legend of Aang in there.
Absolutely. Like without a doubt for everything. It tells you everything about human existence that you need to know. You know, we can have some fun. We can have some downs, but you know, we can all get through this.
But what's interesting as well is that I showed it to you on some of the first nights we were here, and I remember you just laughing your head off at the fat uncle character. Who you're like, what's he got to do? He's such an idiot.
He's an idiot.
Yeah, and you just had that kind of like
So
that
wrong.
naivety of youth where you're like, who's this stupid fat idiot?
Cunt?
And then now by the end of it, you're hanging on his every word, waiting for his wisdom.
I need him in my life. I feel quite empty.
Or
now.
maybe Uncle Zuko is Uncle Zuko. friend.
No, Zuko is his
Zuko's
name.
yeah.
But he just calls him Uncle.
Uncle Iroh. Maybe
Ira. Uncle Ira.
Iroh.
Iroh.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell you what.
Maybe he will show the answers for 2020. Oh, I can understand that some people might not have seen Avatar: Legend of Aang, but I would watch
get the
it
character.
because that could be the perfect antidote for.
It's been my perfect antidote for some terrible times in 2020.
Sure.
100%. Like, that's what we'd started it and then we stopped for a long time. So then when I was by myself, I did the whole of the last book. And my God, it's just this very specific feeling of joy, but profundity. And that's all I can say.
Yeah.
It's almost, I don't want to talk about it anymore because I'll get upset. It's one of those ones I'm pretty sure tomorrow.
So that's called Andrew pushing the emotion down.
Pushing it down. But it will come out tomorrow when I'm drunk on New Year's Eve. I'll just start crying. What's wrong? What's wrong? I just love Avatar.
And is it about Avatar? Yes. Probably is.
Yeah,
actually.
probably is. Yeah, this time.
Yeah. But how do you think you've dealt with 2020?
Well, really, yeah. Not badly.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't like that you're...
No, genuinely.
You're talking for gritted teeth.
No, I'm not talking to you.
It's really hard because whenever you say how have I dealt with something, it always sounds like a leading question to me.
Because I'm catty dad.
Yeah, catty dad, it's true. And I'm
you're a
messy
messy
slut. With the optimism that I have, it has that does help in these times.
Yeah.
Well, it's to be honest because I was talking to my grandma about it on our Christmas call.
It was disappointing how unwise she is compared to Uncle Iroh.
Yeah, well, what does the fire mean, and how does the Earth? What does the Earth's rotation? Talk to me, Grandma. I need this wisdom.
But no, then I called my actual uncle, and he's even more dumb. He doesn't know which way's up or anything. But I spoke to her about it.
It's been a long year.
It's been a long year.
It's been a long year, guys.
He came back yesterday. I haven't seen. I've been isolated.
Yeah, really.
I really have. I was speaking to. What was I even speaking to my grandma about?
Can't help you.
You can't help me with that one. No, we were talking about the different effects of. She's like, I feel so sorry for you young people of how COVID's hit, and I was like, it's really not been. We've been lucky for timings.
Sure.
Because the bad thing, like obviously lockdown, I was sitting at home working from home anyway. I'm ready to come to London. Let my hair down, let the messy slut roam the streets of Camden, the locks of Camden even. But then they
doesn't make sense. We're not in Camden.
I know, but it's near.
It's what Andrew loses when he's slightly off form is the ability to like pull a place or a time out of thin air.
But then I focus too much on what I previously said, and then think of something that's probably worse. But then go, actually, I meant that.
Because when we're on fire, when we're in good form, it's like we're just pulling excellent references, and we're kind of in a zen-like state where you're sort of. You can just trust with confidence that when you have state. You're in the Avatar state where you think of a example or an imaginary scenario and you just completely trust it because you know it's going to bang.
But
when we're in this state,
you stumble over the cams or
you'll pull confidently out of thin air something that doesn't really work, which is slightly closer than nothing, but that makes it worse. But anyway.
Exactly. I couldn't put it better myself. Hence my kerfuffle over the locks of Camden. But we've been quite fortunate with it, I guess, even though it has been frustrating not to come out and let our hair down.
Sure.
In London, I can't imagine what it's like for uni students. It'd be fucking shit. As in, imagine this is your last year.
This is a good question, actually. What do you think, who do you think, of any demographic, who do you think's overall has COVID been the worst for?
The vulnerable people who've died from it.
That's not a demographic.
That's not a demographic.
So you'd say like the over 80s?
Well, no, because
I'm not sure it is.
Well, deaf and people have been affected by deaf. I mean, is bad, but I think demographic-wise, I think uni kids.
Yeah.
Just because it's that loss of it would be horrible. Like, because
first year uni kids probably the worst.
I think third year. Maybe first, actually. Maybe
because you don't have any of that foundation.
And then you've got to go back second year and almost like you're trying to start again or something that hasn't really happened yet. So I think just a loss of a year at uni is fucking shit.
Yeah.
But because that's what I was saying to my grandma, is that because I've got cousins who are at uni, so I say it's so much worse for them because I started a job, then we all moved to London together, so it's really not been that deep.
Yeah.
But Then she was like, yeah, but then she said it's also because it's bad for someone like, because what she said, which is actually quite uncle-like wisdom in a sense, was it's tough.
Fire, water. This is nothing to do with the
What are you
conversation.
talking about, Grandma? We're talking about COVID.
The 4 elements combined.
I said, you're speaking nonsense, Grandma. Have you not been taking your pills? And she went, what did you just told me to be like the uncle from Avatar? What do you want from me? Why don't you come and visit me anymore? Because of COVID.
Because of COVID.
Because of COVID.
Yeah.
So then, but she was like, well, it's also bad for us oldies because we're losing like one of the last years of our lives as well.
Yeah.
Which is tough because I think my grandpa said the same thing as in like, oh, it must be so bad for you kids because we're using a year of our youth to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But I think it is relative, and I think uni, just because of the fact that you lose that year, I think it's so shit because you're only there for 3 years.
Yeah, it's a really short time. When you leave uni, you realise how short a time it actually is.
And I feel like there's a bit of, because that's why I think it's bad for people going for third year as well. Because imagine like you've been there for 2 years, you made your friends, you're ready for like do your last year, and it's kind of like your big goodbye or whatever, and then that's snatched away from you.
Yeah.
And you've got to do your final exams and stuff from home and not be with the people you've been spending all this time with.
Yeah, because with old people, so like my great aunt has stayed in her flat and hasn't seen many people, but she remarked that she wasn't doing that anyway. Yeah. So I think there is certainly to
Ghouls
some
are
generation, it's not
introverted, isolated kind of
hermit people,
hoarder hermit people.
Our inherent bitterness suddenly rises to the thaw when we hit around 50, and we start losing the people we love and end up just in like a angry shell.
I can't wait for those podcast episodes.
It's gonna be great. But I think for old people, it's a less of a change to their life because they're not going out as much anyway. And I guess the argument for it,
they're creepy house people, and they should stay in their house anyway because
I mean, it's good to not see so many old people has been like nice, but
youth, remember that? Crikey.
Yeah, but I think it's harder for young people because you're losing every year. It's like it's a year that shapes you more. It's a year that's in some ways more precious.
Yes.
So
but
I'd say it's hard for the old people who are vulnerable and are losing the end of their life. The really young people, including us slightly, but mainly students.
Yeah.
And then who's got it easiest? Which demographic's got it easiest?
Well, but there's also easiest. Like middle-aged people who have got young kids.
Young kids.
Maybe not the medium. No, because it's difficult because they've got to like entertain them through school.
Yeah, but I think middle-aged people with like 15, 16.
Yeah, but then also you get loads of problems with 15 and 16-year-olds staying inside, and I can imagine there being some quite unhappy houses around the world.
Yeah,
because they just want to go out and
I tell you what,
crush
I think people who've got it hardest
are
the kids going to uni, and the people who have got it the best are the parents of the kids that have gone to uni.
Yeah. Because it's like, I say goodbye to my baby, they're back.
Yeah, or they're back, or they're isolating at uni, and it's like
it's same diff anyway.
And it's like it's in that middle age period where you've still got plenty of life left. But you're not really losing any years.
So suck it up, that demographic. We're fed up of hearing your complaints.
Yeah, so they're the ones who've had it easiest. Uni students, we salute you.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it's it's really hard for all of us to conceptualize just how mental this year has been. And I do say this a lot on the podcast where it's like, occasionally I'll just keep bringing up, this has been absolutely bananas.
It has been bananas, but do you get that thing when everyone's 2020, because we're coming closer to New Year's, we're getting more of the, I can't wait to say goodbye to 2020 and all that stuff. And like just the jokes about 2020 being shit.
Yeah.
And the more I see those jokes, the more I think, it's been all right actually. Because of that, something in me that just gets frustrated when it's just like the same tired jokes are peddled out that I want to take the opposite view.
Yeah,
it's
just tedious.
It's
it's just a tedious because the people saying it often tedious.
But that is not to say that
it has
because
been
we were discussing briefly before is like what would be a more comparable year in the recent history.
Is there going to be a more famous year? Like I don't know. Certainly in my life,
because it's 2020 as well. It's aesthetic. It aesthetically works.
Yeah,
and it just seems to have. Well, there's just been so much. The virus obviously is one of the biggest stories for the last century.
Yeah.
Well, World War.
Well, since World War II, I'd say.
Since World War II.
Yeah.
Because the Cold War happened, but there wasn't really a big.
There has been no global event.
Like the Cuban Missile Crisis, but that wasn't.
Yeah, but that was actually much more dramatic when people found out afterwards how close it came.
Exactly.
Like at the moment, I don't think
9/11.
9/11. That's bigger.
Bigger than coronavirus? I don't think so. I think because of the fact
probably not.
Because it's just like it's rare. So other than something like a world war, it's rare that you get an event or a story that affects every single person on the planet.
Yeah,
that's why I think it's such.
The World War's the only one that comes close, really.
It comes close in my understanding.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and this is what I feel, because I feel for our generation we've been starved of a lot, and it's also like having abilities to like define ourselves culturally. It's like through this period from uni till we're
the toughest thing about coronavirus has been about defining ourselves
culturally. Yeah, we don't have the chance to define ourselves culturally because having not going to not music, but not being able to make stuff in the same way.
I'm fed up with not being able to go to music.
Yeah, but but seriously, it's like we're losing a period to define ourselves as a generation. But then we also have, I think, a trauma bonding that will be, I think it will be an interesting how it will affect our character.
Yeah.
The amount of shit that our generation have got, especially from boomers who are the luckiest of all generations, who I will not hear any shit from.
Yeah.
Because boomers, like the amount of boomers who act like they fought in the Second World War when they literally missed all that. They got the boom of the post-war. They've got cheap houses. They had easy jobs.
What's
They're
the
like the
opposite
most
of
selfish
virtue
generation.
signaling?
They fucked the climate up. They like did all the problems we're dealing with now.
could buy
are
houses.
boomers. They have incredibly, the jobs are easy. Houses are easy.
Yeah.
And then they always tell our generation how we don't know how lucky we've had it. It's like, we've had 2 global recessions, COVID, Trump, Brexit. Like, there's amount of shit that's happened to us. Like, the way they even talk about what the crazy stuff happened to them. I think this dwarfs the shit that happened to the older generation.
But I think that's because they've come from that place of semi-affluent, some people.
Yeah.
But in those, so then they're bringing up their kids in that. So then they're saying, you've had it easy. I think that's probably for your very early childhood is where it is the only place it kind of applies.
Yeah.
But as soon as you then become an adult and you have to go into the world, then it doesn't apply.
Yeah, because we've had such a fuck deal. But I think it could be. I think I still have hope for this generation as having like, we've been through so much history. Like in the last 4 years, the amount of history that's happened. Is insane.
Well, that's because I think there's this quote in Peep Show where Jeremy's talking about he just wants some really good news, and they bring up almost like 9/11, and the joke is like, well, it's obviously bad news, but it was just good.
It was news. Yeah.
And I was like, I really feel that. Because I want some fucking drama.
When were you feeling that? What
for a few years?
When about?
Last year before. So again, this is all my fault because of wishful thinking. Yeah.
But you also had Trump and Brexit, which is pretty big.
Yeah, news. Trump was big, I guess. But yeah, no, Trump is probably and Brexit was as well.
Huge.
So maybe I was feeling it many years ago. Again, time.
Yeah. And it's like,
but it's like not this kind of news, as in one that has been. Well, it's just like. Because as well, it's just other than the war, nothing has been so fucking socially and physically debilitating to everyone around the world.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know.
Because if you look back at history, it's like, if you look at the kind of key milestones, it was like the fall of the Berlin Wall was when it was like, okay, the Cold War's over, and it's sort of like the most business as usual the world ever got, when there was just one collective capitalism is the right choice. Fukuyama wrote that essay saying it's the end of history. Then 9/11 happened, and it threatened to restart history in a sort of way. And still, not much happened of like huge historical value until Trump and Brexit.
Well, the Iraq War, but I guess that's you kind of put that within the 9/11 frame.
Yeah, and like the Gulf Wars had happened. The amount of wars that had happened.
But Trump, Brexit,
it felt like history restarted properly.
But it's just because those are things that are clearly happening, and that is a product of all of these. Because we can bring it into the discussions that. We can even tie it in to people that have commented on the lesbian thing we said.
Sure.
As the polarization is absolutely the issue of our time. And just things like Trump and Brexit are the key expressions of that. So although like these have been, so something like World War II, the event is the big thing.
Sure.
But I think at the moment, what the key thing is polarization. And then Trump, Brexit, all of these things are like they're happening as a consequence of that. And it's just because people are coming further and further divided on their opinions. And then also there is even more divide on the ability to accept anyone else's opinion. And that has been the case for ages. And when you mix it in with how the media affects our lives and how it affects politics. So something like, so you can have polarization of two views, but then when you look at people who are voting for Trump and people who are voting for Brexit, and it's the dissipation of rationality in our society, of surely if people are going to vote in their own interest to a certain extent, then no one does that anymore. Interest and rationality and like basic rational economic decisions don't really exist. It's just two identity camps.
Yeah, and I do also think the big thing that I'm concerned with, and I feel is the only thing that I feel like is, as our place in society, we have a semi-responsibility to
Is
affect.
Johnny Depp going to be in the next Pirates of the Caribbean film?
Because if he is, that franchise has gone to shit.
It's gone to shit, and it's only gone to shit just at that point.
Yeah. And I swear, if you put Johnny Depp in another film after what he did to Amber Heard,
you're gonna have us to deal with.
Yeah, we're gonna write incredibly mean comments, and we're gonna make many different accounts, and we're not gonna hold back.
The podcast would no longer have different views or topics. It would just be about Johnny Depp every week.
About Johnny Depp, yeah.
Sorry,
but it's all right. It's okay. No, I think it's the responsibility to like at least try within our means to like make the left be at least slightly effective and not be a giant shit show. Because I do think, as much as we like to focus on the right as causing these problems, I do think most of the time successes of the right have been failures of the left.
Yeah.
And I think the disorganization and the hypocrisy and the crazy arguments that are coming around on the left and its sort of ineffectiveness and the way that it sort of resigned itself to being a movement based in failure as opposed to ideas and future. Yeah. I do think that's something that if you're in that sort of scene, you do have a responsibility to try and affect. And that's something that I think will define the
But a lot of the problems of the left are coming from what I was talking about in that polarization thing. Of just this inability to accept opinion.
Yes.
And that, because like if you properly get into the nitty gritty of, so if you're just talking about just like economics.
Sure.
Is that if you properly dive into what conservatism is, it's like this coming from a good place. They're trying to, if you go into like the core things of conservatism, they're trying to actually think about how it's best to run a society. And of course there's going to be fucking different opinions on that. And there has just been, because with cancel culture and things like all of that kind of stuff, it's just our ability to have an argument or just a conversation with two dissenting views has absolutely just gone.
And also I enjoy people having different views.
Yeah, I thought it was boring.
And it's not even just the boring thing. I think we all have our different roles to play. You know, I need to accept that I'm in a creative industry. I'm in London. I'm relatively middle class.
Yeah.
I'm going to have... it makes sense that I have more liberal views, but why... I do think someone who maybe is more rural, has had different provincial upbringing, it's like, they're not wrong. They've just come from a different space and they... trying to work those two different views, which we both need to work together, and and having that sort of understanding, I think, is really important.
Walk on in someone else's shoes,
basically, is what it is as well, because it's a fallacy that is often purported that you have these political ideas and opinions just come out of fucking nowhere because of the sense of right and wrong. The sense of right and wrong is completely generated by your upbringing and every experience that you've had up to this day and everything you've consumed and everything that you've lived. And the different experiences that we've all had. So naturally, because we've got a vast amount of diverse experiences in the world, people are going to come to different conclusions on things. So then to say, then all this thing of, surely we should then base that on like an understanding rather than a visceral hatred.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a joke at some points, the way that people on the left handle themselves. But what I was talking about this today, actually, what I've found interesting is it's like in that sort of bubble of like privileged woke left ideologues, the ones who are pushing what we've just been talking about the most aggressive, they don't even realize that there's another form of leftism. Like, what's fascinating is it's like obviously we both represent a different type of leftism, which is like anti-woke to a certain extent, or trying to shift, fundamentally trying to shift identity politics towards class politics, or at least have a more open view of that, and also trying to really pick apart the actual problems and trying to build for the future, as opposed to what I see as like an incredibly narcissistic, fake establishment view. Well, like a view that purports the establishment through the aesthetics of radicalism, which I think is super dangerous. But what's crazy is those people, those sort of millionaire kids posting pastel-covered graphics on Instagram.
The pastel's the main problem.
That's the pastel colour. It's tasteful, admittedly, but that is part of the trickery.
It looks chic, but what does that actually mean underneath?
It does look very
pastel?
chic, actually. I take it back. I like the pastels.
Scrubby on the pastel, though.
But the interesting thing is that they don't even realise that there's people on the left like us who exist, which is what's crazy. That's what's genuinely... And that's partly what
idea of
I wanted... I do think... I hope that podcasts like this, podcasts... like Chapel Trap House, podcasts like Red Scare do very well, is it's like try and make people who might be fed up with how tedious people on the left are and realise you can be against racism, you can be looking for a better society, you can think that capitalism doesn't work, you can want to like maybe reform voting, you can do all of these like progressive things and not be a tedious cunt, like showing people that it's like those annoying people on Twitter, that's not, they don't have the monopoly on these ideas of racial equality and stuff like that. Well, like that is a different way, but they don't even know that exists.
Yeah, which is.
And if you bring it up with them, and I've done it in conversations, like someone who I know is aggressively woke, and someone's complaining about the left just as interesting, and they'll be like, "Yeah, I know, I'm." Like God, and they'll think
there's no other place.
Everyone who's woke kind of thinks that the left is fucked and they're the ones who got it right, even though collectively they're the problem, which is what I've noticed. It's like,
well, but what do they mean that the left is fucked? What other?
Well, it's like you'll bitch about how like hypocritical people on the left are to an incredibly hypocritical woke influencer, and they'll roll their eyes and be like, oh, I know, right? And they'll try and have a moment with you because every single one of them is so narcissistic,
so vapid as well.
and so focused on themselves they don't even realise where they stand in the political spectrum.
Yeah, because it's become the expression of an identity, right, without having any substance. It goes back to what I was saying about nothing exists in a rational world anymore. Because people will, if you're having conversations like that with people who are doing these things, it just becomes this, it's almost like politics with social media and all that stuff, is that it's almost like a checklist of if you're going to be this kind of person, you have to have this kind of view. And therefore it's like, you're not going into it because of like passion and raw desire. Like if we're looking back on any kind of social movement or anything, and just like the passion that these people feel, you just don't really feel that exists anymore either. It just feels like it just dissipates with thin air. As soon as someone says like any of these arguments are put forward, it comes out and it's like it doesn't seem to have that much thought behind it or that much understanding like the place that they're in. Because one, if they're like so like easy to diminish what you're saying whilst also doing it, it's because I just think there's a lack of thought, and it's just because it's almost like a checklist of this is the right way to be in the polarization thing. This is the right way to be, and you just kind of have to do that.
And the reason why, whatever their vague, unclear political goals of this certain type of leftists are. The reason why they'll never be successful is because the only way you can have a successful movement in any form of politics is collective action. There needs to be, but they don't have a collective consciousness as a movement because they're all individuals, and they're imagining. You know, people like Jamila Jamil, her imagining for social change is that she's the one who brought it about. Yeah, and that's fundamentally the problem. It's real social change can be brought about by individuals, but can only really be brought about by individuals who are prepared to give up their individuality for a collective goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the problem is you see these people who are so narcissistic and so focused on the fact that before the idea, it's that they came up with that idea, and you're like, this will never work because you need to have some sort of martyrdom or believe in something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly. But because that's interesting because there's been a focus on inward politics or identity.
Sure.
So things like trans rights, gay rights. So that's like... Which is an interesting point because it's also trying to collectivize a movement when you're trying to believe when you're arguing for the belief that everyone kind of has a right to be their own individual. So then that naturally, when you have identity politics coming into those movements, it naturally means you're going to get like different factions in it, and then like even within feminism, you've got so many different factions within all of that, which is because it's a complex argument. And that's what I always find is the problem with some of this stuff is that there can be so much hatred within a movement like feminism where there's people who believe there's different groups who believe two different things of it, and they hate each other more than they hate the patriarchy nowadays. Sure. And that is because people are called bad feminists, or people are called like bad whatever.
Internalized misogyny. What's the something like that.
Yeah. And it's because it's a fucking complex thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I just feel like we've lost our ability to appreciate and grapple with complexity. Everything is black and white nowadays.
I mean, the biggest one of that, which is like, I'm pretty confident speaking on most contentious issues. I'm pretty all right with that. But something that even scares me is the hysteria around the trans debate, because that is one of the most complex social ideas of any. It's not like gay rights. It's not like civil rights. It's a very complex and hard to understand idea that's only recently becoming the mainstream. And the way that there's no ability to open a debate when you're trying to sell an incredibly complex, like for someone who comes from maybe a provincial background, working class, who has a fairly heteronormative existence, telling them that gender's a complete construct. I'm not saying it's not, I'm not saying it is. That is a tough thing to sell. Yeah. And the fact that there's not even a space, like on unis, the aggressiveness in which any sort of dissent when it comes to this party line, it is shut down and you're a demon.
And that's the problem, because that's not how people change their ideas. Yeah. Like the whole point of that should be to educate people about the existence of trans people who have obviously been pushed down historically for forever. The point, if you're then gonna, so now it's a great thing that now it's coming out and there's more and more awareness of it. But there also has to be an appreciation for people. There has to be an appreciation for people to understand it, and by shutting off people who don't get it, doesn't work. As in, like, no matter if it's like a good thing or bad thing to do to allow people to feel, because there is also the fair debate of like, you can't. These people have been existing for so long in such difficult conditions that they just said, "Fuck it, we exist, get over it," which is fair. But,
I don't think it is.
But then part of it is part of it is because it's more about it's more about trans people's feelings and their.
But the problem is with the trans debate, more so than other ones, is it's the idea that that the ideas discussed in trans debate only affect them, as if it's like, I completely understand.
Most of it does.
Obviously, it does. But
most of it
when
does.
when you're saying gender is a complete construct, that affects everyone. So that we do have a right to raise queries or open it to a public forum, because it is a much bigger
Because when you say this, you're not talking about the existence of trans people.
No, of course not.
That's good, because whenever we have this guy, I always want to make you preface, that's not what you're saying.
But like, for example, with like, you can understand it's like certain forms of racism. It's like you can view that as like allowing people to exist, but this isn't the same. Elements of it aren't the same, because it's completely changing the definition of our own gender as well.
Yeah.
You know, and that affects everyone and is a really complex idea to get across.
Which is true. But
and also transgender people have such an array of ideas.
Yeah. Exactly.
Some transgender people view it in a certain way and others do. So that
then the intersection with trans people and feminists as well is a fucking nightmare. TERFs. Yeah. All this stuff. It's just like, what does TERF stand for? Trans-exclusive radical feminists.
Yeah.
And there's just, as you said, which I agree with in your point of that.
I'm not debating the trans issue. I'm debating the right to debate the trans issue. Like, I'm not saying any belief.
And when you say the right to debate, it's not about the right to debate whether it exists and it's a thing or not. Because
obviously,
it's not that. But there are like, but then, because what my point would be that like these people, ideas change as well in people's minds with the ability to talk about these things. And if you're confronted with someone who doesn't, like, on the most extreme end, who is denying the existence of trans people, do you think saying to that person, "You're cancelled, fuck you, whatever," do you think he's going to change his mind?
No,
it's not. And like, I know that could potentially be a bit of a wishy-washy thing, or like let's cleanse the world with ideas and music and peace and flowers. Sometimes you've got to have a bit of a war to get these things done. But I don't know. It seems that the lack of ability to debate is a problem in a lot of things.
That comes
but
also.
It's people. But then that comes into but it's because it's not. We can debate it, but it's just the ways of which things are shut off, and which is just I can't really understand how people can be shut off in ideas. That I think is a dangerous road to go down on loads of different reasons.
And it's the techniques that are used there. And I think obviously this is natural belief as opposed to focusing on ideas. I do genuinely feel a lot of these things are establishment suppressing ideas that threaten it. Genuinely.
Yeah.
You know, it is when someone claims to be a radical, has radical ideas, and they share the exact same ideology as a Gillette ad, that's something that should be looked at.
Yeah.
You know, if you have the same beliefs as multinational corporations, maybe you should take a look at that. You know, if you're purporting to changing power for the better, and all the most powerful corporations in the world all share those beliefs, like it's interesting that the amount of money that goes into a lot of these very woke ideas.
But that's the problem, because it also then acts as a mask for the genuine issues that are afoot in society, because you can have an advert for a fucking Tesla, or I don't know what's a better example, let's say Shell or something. Yeah. It happens all the fucking time. Is that mate, what's like Boots or something like that, when you see these adverts, you see adverts and it's like they're ticking boxes because it is in to be woke in this way. And that's the thing, because it's easy to then, because then companies then create an identity for themselves within that idea. They become woke companies because they've done an advert where they've included some like BAME identities. And that the problem that then does is it masks the true thing that leftists should be tackling as well, but more, we've kind of forgotten about this, is the power that these corporations have and the problems that they're reaping upon the entirety of society. But if they put a black person in their advert, they put a gay person in their advert, tick, great, they're cool now.
Yeah, and it's
which
also
is so frustrating to watch.
If you have,
and it's bullshit.
Yeah.
You see people, you see like car companies or tire companies, and it's like, we stand for this. You don't stand for shit. You're an economic entity. Its only existence is to make profit. That's all you do. And then anything that you get towards further away from that is more of a lie, and then it just makes it become more and more entrenched in this system. And which is my problem, is that we're not tackling some of the other issues that we need to be tackling.
And the real danger of it, I think, is it's like this idea that from the Gillette ad to the Guardian and the New York Times, the real problem is that these things, so like the Guardian and the New York Times, you'd see as liberal, left wing, they are still run by establishment power. But what they do is that they set the limits of the debate. Because in the public conversation, it's like what is left wing is set by them, so it doesn't go any further than that. Yeah. So when you have identity politics with absolutely no class analysis, when it's like this is all the oppression that's going on is racial, it's not about the material conditions of the working class, the underclass.
They're fundamentally linked is the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. But when you set it as just being about identity politics, it means that when people talk about the left, they talk about this very small section, and they can shut out the real.
Because I was listening to Bill Burr talking about the financial crisis and the bankers and stuff, and he was just saying we've forgotten about that, which is. It is true. It's like we had one of the biggest financial meltdowns ever in a global economy because of how capitalism works.
Sure.
And now we're talking about identity, and of course we should be. Of course, there's a place for that, but the left have forgotten their pure economic basis as well. Yeah. And that we're just moving on, and that's the thing I was saying that annoys me about these corporations, because it's easy for capitalism and corporations to hide behind identity politics and not talk about what's like some of the main economic things that are happening. The mass fucking exploitation of everyone in the world. You know what I mean? Or even crises like that, and just we've let the bankers off.
Yeah, because Adam Curtis actually said something quite interesting. It's like we're reaching a stage where
Bill Burr versus Adam Curtis.
Versus Adam Curtis. Yeah, I'd like to see that as a boxing match. Yeah. He basically said it's like what it does to a public when you have bankers who we all know caused the financial crash. Basically, none of them went to jail. Yeah. We all know that. Yeah. They all got to walk free. Politicians lie to us, and they know that they lied to us, and we know that they lied to us. It creates this fake reality where it's like you see people do bad things and then not get punished for it, and you realize how fruitful any of these sort of ideas of what is right, and that erodes trust. And that's probably why we're in the part of why we're in the position we're in, is because it's such a charade, the whole thing.
Everything is, yeah.
But it's to the point where it's such a charade that the people who are causing the charade know it's a charade. That's what's so twisted about these things.
They're not afraid to like be so brazen in their actions that it's so clear that it is a charade. It doesn't matter
because politics used to be they're trying to convince you, and they knew that some people would never believe them, but it was still trying to convince you. Now they've accepted that you won't believe it.
Yeah,
but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter anymore
because it doesn't.
They know everyone knows everyone's lying. 2020,
and, and it's like this is what is the benefit of there being podcasts or trying to build more alternative media.
It really sounds like we're fighting for survival at this point, doesn't it?
It's
the end of 2020.
Yeah, I mean, I think something that I've certainly realised over the last couple of years, certainly this year, it's like people need to realise that they really can no longer trust a lot of these. You can't trust the BBC, you can't trust The Guardian, you can't trust the New York Times, because they do all fundamentally serve as lapdogs for power. I genuinely think that. So when you're trying to get and understand how power works, when you're trying to understand what the establishment that's got us into the situation, all I implore people to do is really try and forget about what is classed as trustworthy and realise where that comes from and how important,
come on to Boys Come On, listen to some poo jokes.
We are the only people who are really sticking it to the man these days. But yeah, that was great. But before we end the show, what do you think you're going to expect from 2021?
Oh, sunshine, rainbows, and candy canes, and happiness. It's going to be the best year ever. Well, I read a thing that there's some sociologists believe that it's going to be a kind of a similar social movement to the Roaring Twenties, because we've all been locked inside for so long. So we may well see one of the biggest explosions of social activity and cultural activity that we've seen since the 20s. That would be kind of, because it'll be our Roaring 20s.
It genuinely will, yeah.
So I'm hoping for that. I'm hoping for us all to go out, have a bit of fun, get a bit rowdy. Probably won't happen, to be honest. I mean, it's going to be more lockdowns for a bit at the very start of this year. It's clear, it's becoming more and more clear that it's just going to be one of those gradual eeping out of lockdown rather than this kind of one. I think we spoke about that at one point. We thought there might be this one joyous moment where Boris calls a conference and it's the end. Coronavirus is stopped. V-Day. Exactly. But this, because I think there's obviously going to be a day where there's going to be like, cool, we'll celebrate that as this time when it stopped. But it's going to be, that's the shame about it. It's going to be more like a gradual returning to normal rather than that one day where it's like we'll let out the gates or something and then go and play in our herd. But I think, I don't know, to be honest. I don't see much more stability coming. Do we want this to be a positive thing?
No.
No, cool. I don't see much more stability coming. There's this whole new... Well, the vaccine, it should be a good thing as it's rolled out. It's going to take a long fucking time to roll out. It's clearly taken ages to roll out. This new strain is worrying as well. Who knows? There probably will even be... I mean, we always just think this will be the last lockdown. Do you know what I mean? It could well be another one around the fucking corner.
For sure.
It's like... It almost just seems a small... like gradually edging towards an idea of a normal... and I think it's going to be frustrating. I think it's kind of good that the New Year's come at this point because you can all blame it on 2020. So then 2021, you're then maybe thinking, although we're kind of on the road to something that's been like, it's been a downward trend for a long time. So maybe even though it's not going to be that significant one,
it often bounces back in the way that the rhythms of history.
So even though I don't think it's going to be like mad changes. I feel like just the change of the year and then just the vaccine, everything is going to be a slight gradual increase. And I feel like we're all so fed up with everything that's happening that we're kind of used to bad news.
Yeah, but I think focusing on a more positive view of it, I do think you're right, which is like when let's say, which is perfectly plausible, and I don't think it's naive to think that when we roll out the vaccine, let's say April, May, June, that's feasible that we would have rolled out the vaccine far enough that we're out and everything's back to normal.
Yeah.
Saying that there hasn't been another disaster, I do think there will be an incredible energy of a generation of people who have realised how grateful they should be for any and all of the privileges in their life. Because I think the older generations would have taken all this stuff for granted, and certainly we did, because like now the fact that going out most weekends or like going to seeing live music, going to the cinema, and these kind of things that would just seem so regular. Now I think I hope that we will have like a new feeling of gratefulness, but hopefully there'll be like, I think a lot of people during lockdown have like started to think about their life more, and they started thinking about how things can get taken away, and there might be a more of a spirit of seizing the day a bit.
Yeah, hopefully. It's always one of those worrying things of how long does that actually last, because it's almost like a novelty wears off.
Yeah, I don't know, but it could. I think this is such an effect.
Stick in our mind.
It's such an effect that it could like shake the character of this generation.
I think that's a good way to look at it. I think hopefully it will. I think that goes into the whole Roaring '20s thing of that it can absolutely happen. And I think, I think
we've got to hope it does. I think just for, I think the two things that should take away from this podcast is view everything that's happened this year as being your fault.
Yeah.
And be unbelievably positive that it's all going to get better.
Yeah.
I think that's our view. But genuinely, I think if it's going to be bad, I don't think having a positive attitude is going to be, you're going to be too blindsided, because I think it's just better to have a positive mindset.
Oh, yeah. Well, it goes back to the optimism thing. Absolutely.
And even people, like, I feel like there's lots of good things that have come out of lockdown for certain people. And it's like, it is still, you can't help your situation that you're in. And you just have to work with what you've got. And trying to learn those skills will, in the long run, be beneficial, I think. You got any closing statements?
Well, I think that was the closing statement.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm happy with that, and I endorse that message.
So on the Patreon, we'll carry on a vague sort of similar conversation.
My skincare routine.
Well, this will come out on 2021.
This will be 2021. The first content you'll see on 2021.
The first 2021.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year's. It's been fucking rough. So let's hope, that it isn't as rough this year. I should have left it on the last.
You should have left it on the last note, you fucking nutcase.
Yeah, I should have left it on the last
Play
one.
the music.
Yeah, play the music.
Christ.
All right, thanks guys. See you next week. Bye.